Civilization was a pivotal game, a title of such importance that it took 5 years for a sequel to be made. But in the meantime, Sid Meier and Reynolds worked over the idea of making a similar kind of game, but one that is focused on one particular aspect. Probably one of the most important periods of the past millennium, the expansion of Western European empires into the Americas. And this idea would be explored in a game called Sid Meier's Colonization, with the tagline "Create a New Nation." This game was released in the year 1994, and on the background you will see images from the original DOS version as well as from the Windows 3.1 version, which does not work that well, but it's on the Internet Archive, so I thought, well, why not try it? I'm actually not sure how it is on the Internet Archive because it also contains the DOS version, which is still available for purchase, so that's probably going to be liquidated soon. Versions aside, the idea of the game was mostly the same one that Civilization had. You start with settlers, with colonists in this case, you build your settlement, your fledgling city, and expand and explore a new world. In certain terms, you can think of this as a sort of precursor to the idea of Alpha Centauri, where you also began as a colonist in a completely new world, one filled with wonders and dangers and untold mystery. Whereas this one is filled with people that have been living here for millennia, and you're going to have to deal with them one way or another. A game like Colonization would probably not be something you could make today, in today's political climate. When they remade it in 2008, it already drew some criticism that it glorified colonization, that it was, evil because it showcased reality. Granted, it's a twisted sense of reality, not in the bad way necessarily, because it doesn't have some aspects that were even darker than going into someone's land and forcibly taking it over while killing them in the process, such as kidnapping all their children and enslaving them for generations. Colonization does about as good of a job at teaching people history as Civilization did, namely it does it very badly. The core idea of the game is that you start off as an emissary, a colonizer from one of 4 major empires. You've got the Spanish, the Dutch, the British, and the French. Notably absent are the Portuguese, which, as you may know, have kind of a big influence in the Americas. But again, being a game in the vein of Civilization, I'm just happy you can't colonize America with Americans or Australians. It does try at least a bit to maintain a sense of historical accuracy. A bit. Though you can play on completely random maps that have no relation to reality. Once you arrive in this new world, you are tasked with constructing your settlement in the best possible place you can put it, while still not encroaching on territory enough to get attacked by the natives. The natives, though, are not evil. They're not the bad guy here. They are not the enemy. They are never portrayed as the enemy. They come bearing gifts and open hands and even let you keep the land you land on just so you could cooperate together and live in friendship and harmony forever. And in a certain sense, it is possible to coexist with them. You have the ability to cooperate, to establish trade relations with them, even without completely screwing them over. You can help them when they're in need, and they will quite often send you gifts. They'll often send you things you also need. You can very well coexist peacefully until you try and steal from the graves of their ancestors, which tends to upset them for some reason, almost like it's their ancestors' graves you're digging up for gold. The Spanish, I believe, get a bonus for it actually. What I'm getting at is that the game does not glorify the idea of colonizing and destroying an indigenous culture. It just presents the idea, while not letting the player commit even more egregious, more horrifying actions against the natives. So you landed, you established a colony, what now? Well, here begins your long trek towards victory. This game was designed with a bit of a... all of Sid Meier's games are made with a bit of an American mindset, namely with that revolutionary spirit, that spirit of rebelling against the empire, that spirit of gaining your freedom, your independence. And that was the objective of the game. That's why it has a tagline, create a new nation. That was your end goal, to establish colonies, create a sufficiently robust trading mechanism that would allow you to accrue wealth, gather resources, hire a bunch of soldiers, equip them quite well, and then, over time, ferment a bit of dissent towards the royals. Oh, and mind you, they did not really try and make the empire seem like anything other than complete assholes, which is kind of completely historically accurate. They were major assholes, and they will come to you constantly with new taxes, with new requests, and over the decades they will try and bleed you dry. And you can accept all of their commands, all of their requests, but you also have the option of turning them down, and that will lead to a boycott. Everything you try to export to Europe will be stopped. You cannot sell anything back to the mainland, and eventually they may send forces to pacify you. But again, as dissent ferments and people try to envision a future where they rule their own destiny, which means you have to get about 50% of your population actually wanting to go independent, you have the option of declaring your independence. You need some founding fathers to which get elected yearly. It's an interesting kind of system, and the result is that the empire will try and run you over with their massive fleets and massive armies. If you resist, you win. If not, you lose. And that's probably the game's biggest failing. Colonization is a really well-made game about managing colonies and trade. You have a plethora of industries, you have a bunch of resources to collect, you have people that actually specialize in certain activities. You can have carpenters, expert carpenters, master carpenters, you can have tobacconists, you can have master rum distillers, each of them contributing to the colonies, to its success, to what it can achieve, what it can create, what it can export, what can it do to get more money to fund that army. And managing your settlements, making sure they produce enough food as well as the goods they need to acquire the riches you also need to make that army, is without a doubt the best part of the game. There's also combat, which isn't all that great, leaving the core of colonization being the economical simulation and the town administration. You can even set up trade routes, automatic-ish trade routes, between your colonies, which will enable you to move resources from a small village where you found a lot of tobacco to a port where you can actually manufacture cigars and send them back east. Now, the game may look crude to you now, but keep in mind this was 1994. The game looks better than Civilization. It looks a heck of a lot better than it did. I'd say it even beats out stuff like Master of Magic, which was released in the same year. And the Windows version looks fine. Also, the remade version looks amazing, being based on Civilization 4. What I mean is that, for the time, the simulation it had was good, it was robust, and it was fun. Was it as robust as something like Trevor Chan's Capitalism, which came out a year later? No, that's why it was fun. And often quite challenging, not because the natives would eventually realize that you're kind of going to be staying here a while and expanding and leaving everybody in trails of tears, mostly because you have cannons and they don't, but because, much like in the actual colonization of the Americas, you are not alone. All the other empires are also sending their ships to colonize this world, this brand new continental pair, and you will quite often run into them. They'll sometimes be at war, they'll sometimes be at peace. You can even trade with them from time to time, and and, well, let's face it, there's a good chance you're gonna go to war with them, and, well, they do have cannons. Quite a lot of them. Then again, the combat was really not the best aspect of the game at all. As I've said before, it's highly unlikely that a game like this will be made today. Some people just find it too offensive, and others believe it to be a whitewashing of the colonial era because there's no slavery in it. The only way you could make a game like this today would be through an allegory like Alpha Centauri, which was about the colonization of a different planet. It also had indigenous life upon which you could also wreak havoc. So if you're interested in playing Colonization, you can find it, well, just about everywhere. It's on Steam, it's on GOG, it's in the original DOS version, it's in the remade version with Civilization 4's engine. Not the Windows version though, that's only on the Internet Archive. Why? Well, the Windows version is made for Windows 3.1 and there's really not much compatibility with that kind of executable now in Windows 10 64-bit edition. Regardless, give Colonization a try if you're interested in seeing the concept of colonization implemented in a game. One that uses a real-world setting and puts you at the controls of the process. What would you do? How would you change history? Or would you? It's your choice. And much like the harsh reality of the present, in the end, what you did, what atrocity you committed, doesn't matter. You win once you get your independence, no matter how you do it. The game could have probably used an expansion dealing with more consequences, but maybe that would stretch a bit too much in the realm of fantasy.